Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of what has now ended up being a series of videos where we demystify the telecoms industry for you and sort of teach you how we do what we do. The last video I asked for questions from people on YouTube and on LinkedIn, and we received quite a few, so I'm really grateful for that. And today we're going to focus on one from our good friend Pete Snape, who is the owner of Harry Solutions. They're an IT company that are based actually in the same building as us, just right below us. And Pete asked, how do I know I'm getting a good deal on my telecoms, whether it be on price or on service? And that's probably going to kick off what is going to become a series of videos that answers just that one question. But today we are going to focus on the main, most important piece of all this, and that is contracts. Let's get started. In this video, I'm going to give you an overview of what a typical telecoms contract contains and what you should expect, why we construct them the way we do, and then I'm going to leave you with 3 useful, actionable tips that you can take away with you and use to get a better deal on your telecoms, whether it be with us or whether it be with any other telecoms provider. First of all, let's just go over the components of a telecoms contract. And there are 2 main components that you will typically see on any given order form. Those are upfront costs, which might be handsets, it might be Wi-Fi access points, it might be routers, it might be switches, and it could even be the installation work itself if there's quite a lot of work to do to actually get the system up and running. Some businesses actually prefer to spread these upfront costs across the duration of the term, and we'll go into that a bit more detail probably in the next video, which is going to be specifically about handsets and what to look out for. And then component number 2 is recurring costs. So that generally is made up of a couple of things. That is broadband services, connectivity products, things like that. So that might be lease lines, it might be your broadband, your fibre to the premises, your fibre to the cabinet. And then the other main component is, of course, the VoIP seat rental, the license rental for your per extension system licenses. And that's generally billed per user per month as a broad rule. There are ways we can amend that slightly, but for the most part, that's a good rule to go by. So you may now be wondering why we even sign people into a contract in the first place. There's lots of services out there available for businesses, software-based services that are in 30-day rolling contracts, for example. And that is something that many people don't necessarily understand about the telecoms world, and that is that for the most part, it's dictated actually by our wholesale providers and the way that we sign up for these services with them. And generally speaking, we match however we sign a customer into us as a commitment to our wholesalers. So for example, if you signed up with a broadband with River Technologies for 24 months or 36 months, we are also in a contract with our wholesaler, which may be Openreach, maybe Gamma Telecom, whoever it might be, for the same amount of time that you've signed in with us. So as you can imagine, we actually don't really have a preference as to how long a customer signs in to a contract with us for. Don't get me wrong, we would love to have customers for as long as possible, but generally speaking, the less time they are obligated to be with us, the more opportunity we have to retain that customer for all the right reasons, which is service and doing our job really well. So for example, if a customer was to ask us specifically, they wanted to only be in a 24-month contract, we often get asked to put together deals for 24 months. For example, if the customer's only got a couple of years left on the lease on the property that they're currently in and they may well end up moving, we'll happily put a package together with that. And we're very transparent about the fact that that is just going to cost slightly more per month for the rentals of those services. But most of the time, that's a commercial decision that businesses are quite comfortable making without us pushing them in one direction or another. There are very rare occasions that we will actually sign ourselves in to a lesser term than the company has signed with us. So for instance, we could have a customer who don't particularly pass a credit check with flying colours, but we have plenty of other reasons to think that it's a good idea to do business with them. And what we might do just to mitigate our risks is make slightly less margin effectively by signing ourselves into, I don't know, say a 12-month agreement with the wholesaler, but signing the customer in for a 36-month agreement with us. And that way, if something was to go wrong with that company, and perhaps they weren't able to pay, or, I mean, worst case scenario, they disappeared off the face of the planet, we've at least mitigated the risk, because when that does happen to us, we are expected to pay the full remainder of the term to the wholesaler. Now, if I'm fortunate enough to be sat in front of any one of you talking to you about the telecoms needs for your business, as a general rule, you're always going to get the same thing from me, and that advice is 36 months is the sweet spot. Again, we actually don't mind which one you choose, but beyond 36 months, the diminishing returns are pretty steep. There's not much more to be gained from a cost saving perspective to sign into, say, for instance, a 60-month agreement or even longer, which, believe me, is becoming strangely normal at the moment in our industry. We'll always err on the side of go for the lesser term of 36 months. That keeps us honest. It means that when that 36 months is over, you're far more likely to re-sign with us and want to go again because we've done a good job, as opposed to just because we've held you into a contract for a really long time from the beginning. One thing I will say is that far more often than I'm particularly happy with, I'm seeing customers having signed into 72-month agreements, which has become a bit of a scary baseline within certain sized businesses in our industry. There isn't really a good commercial reason from a customer's point of view to be signing into that length of contract at all. And generally speaking, if a company's default approach, without making any mention of it, is to just put 72 months on the agreement, then for me, that's a red flag. There has to be a reason that they, by default, want you signed in for 7 years. Just think about how much technology has moved on in both the business and the consumer spaces over the last 7 years. How different is that going to look in 7 more years' time, or even in 5 years' time? And you're going to be stuck in a situation where you can't really take advantage of that because you're locked in a contract for a technology that may well be modern and relevant and very capable at the time that you sign up for it. But technology moves very, very quickly, and there's an exponential rate of movement within the technology world. So it stands to reason that you would be outmoded in the technology you're signing up for today in a much shorter space of time than you were for the last phone system you had, for argument's sake. So, key takeaway number 1 is 36 months is the sweet spot. This is possibly the 4th time I've mentioned this in this video, and I don't apologize for that. I'm happy to hammer home this point. If you're being presented with a document that has more than 36 months on the agreement, and you haven't had a conversation with the company that's presenting you with that document as to why it's more than 36 months, then stop before you sign it and ask the question. Generally speaking, if someone can't give you a good reason why you're about to sign a 72-month agreement instead of a 36-month agreement, either don't sign that agreement or renegotiate and ask them to change the term. Item number 2 is check the small print. Please check the small print. The amount of people who have inadvertently signed themselves in to much longer contracts than they assumed they were being signed into, that I've seen is scary. There's been 2 examples recently of big telecoms companies in the UK, neither of which I'm going to name because that's not how we do things here, but they're large companies, and both of the documents, there have been clear attempts in the formatting or the wording of the document to obfuscate the fact that this is in fact a 72-month agreement or a 60-month agreement. And for me, I don't see any particularly good reason for that being hard to find. You know, on River's order forms, right next to where you e-sign them, it gives you in big bold writing the amount of months you're signing in for. And of course, we've always had a conversation first as to what an appropriate length of contract is with the customer, which again is not always happening as far as I can tell. So 36 months, that's your sweet spot. If you're being asked to sign for any more, ask why. And if you're not being given a good reason as to why, then perhaps either look elsewhere or renegotiate and see if you can get a better deal. And key takeaway number 3, possibly the most important one if you've already got a telephone system in your business, and that is take 5 minutes right now, find that PDF that is the terms and conditions and the order form that came with your current telephone system. Use Control F, find the words termination, cancellation. What you're looking for is what the notice period is that you need to give at the end of that contract, the minimum notice period. Now, in a lot of cases, that is 90 days. That's the default in our industry. And a lot of people don't realize that. They get to 2 weeks before the end of their contract thinking they can just serve notice and in the meantime go shopping for another provider or a new product or whatever it might be, and find that actually not only have they not given notice in time, but a lot of contracts out there that I'm seeing have a clause in there that says if you roll into a new contract, you're rolling into the entire term you originally signed up to again, which is a nightmare, especially if you aren't happy with the service or the product that you've been provided for the original term. And that's today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for the questions that we got. I've got a few more videos already planned based on some more of those questions that we received. If you've still got questions, keep them coming by all means. And next week we're going to be talking about handsets, as I alluded to earlier, and whether or not you should even be paying for them at all. I'll see you then.